I'm Lizzie Harrison for Card Player TV, here today with Roy Winston and Michael Binger. We're going to talk about a new column in Card Player magazine called The Oracle's Corner. First of all, thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Well, thanks for having us, Lizzie.
So tell me a little bit about how you decided to team up for this column in the magazine.
Well, I think in some ways it came together very naturally because Michael and I discuss hands sometimes. You know, not uncommonly at the end of a tournament or in the middle of a tournament, you go to each other and you'll say, hey, what do you think about how I played this hand, or what would you have done differently? And we seem to do that a lot, and we came up with a concept to do it based on that, I think.
Yeah, I mean, Roy approached me with the idea, and he set it up, and I was very happy to participate. It's really kind of a novel concept, because there isn't really any articles like that where you get competing points of view discussing the same hand and bringing real life hands and bringing in the person who played it as well.
So how do your styles differ, your approach to the game?
Well, I guess judging from the first article, maybe Roy is a little more aggressive than I am. I'm not sure if that's the case all the time. I couldn't draw any real...
Nothing cut and dry.
Yeah, cut and dry. We're probably going to have very subtle differences in opinion depending on the details of each hand and situation. I can't draw any, broad conclusions about our different styles. I think we're both on the tighter side and more conservative side. We're not like loose cannons out there usually. So,
I think generally our styles have a lot of overlap in them, and I think that we play similarly in a lot of ways. With obvious differences, and I think sometimes I might be more aggressive in a spot and Mike might not, but in some spots it could be the other way around where he would be more aggressive. But I do think in general today I think that there are two broad styles of play, and when I say two broad styles of play, that means extremely generally. And you have the very aggressive, play a lot of pots, the Tuan Lee style, if you will. And then you have the more Dan Harrington style. And I would put those at two opposite ends of the spectrum, and I would say we're probably more towards the more conservative style. If forced to clarify.
Yeah, I would agree.
All right, well, let's talk about the first column. It involved Noah Schwartz in a hand where he had pocket tens pre-flop, and you both had a little bit different opinions on what he should have done. We'll start with you, Michael. What do you think about his pre-flop play with the two tens?
Well, I argue that it was the correct play to call before the flop. He had a player who was probably raising very tight standards under the gun with a somewhat short stack, putting in about 10% of his stack, more or less. He had like 250,000 starting the hand, and he raised to 23,000. And going through a careful analysis of his hand ranges and the possible outcomes if Noah was to re-raise, and then what he would do. So what I concluded was that if he were to re-raise a standard amount, let's say 3 times the original bet, more or less, he would be forced to fold if the original undergun raiser moved all in, because he would be too dominated by his range and he would not be getting the right price to call. And furthermore, the undergun raiser is rarely, if never, going to call. This is the substantial re-raise.
Absolutely.
So your 2-10s basically becomes a bluff. And in addition, I also argued in the article that it's a negative EV play to make that re-raise. You might be turning your hand into a bluff, but it might be a positive EV play. But I also argue that you're better off folding your 2-10s than re-raising there. And then I conclude that the only good play is to call and play your hand in position. And you've got a stack, a person who's got a precarious stack size who doesn't want to go broke, and they're probably not going to be wanting to bluff off their chips there. So you're probably going to get a lot of information. The flop comes all rags, and they check to you. There's a good chance you have the best hand. You can take it down. So that was what I came to.
And you didn't agree with that, Roy? You thought that he should have re-raised pre-flop?
Well, I don't think that that's a bad way to play it, but I think as you get to the later stages of a large tournament, I think that the value of pairs, big pairs, go up, in my opinion. And I think that, there's only 4 hands he's dominated by. And if it's one of those aces through jacks pairs, those are the only 4 pairs where he's really dominated. Any other hand, he's a favorite to, or at least, close, a slight favorite, basically a coin flip against ace, king, ace, queen, something like that. And I think by re-raising in that position, he'll quickly ferret out where he is. And factoring into it the read he has on the player, I think it'll help figure out where he is in the hand. And, when I feel like raising is asking a question. I'm saying, hey, I think I have the best hand. What do you think? And then the chances that they will fold and you take the pot down right there would make me the happiest. If they call the raise, well, you're still back in the same situation, just with a little bit larger pot. And if they move in on you or re-raise you, depending on the chip stacks, and there was a smaller chip size, so his move probably wouldn't have been to re-raise, it would have been to move all in. I think that then you have to cross that bridge where you think, hey, does he have a pair smaller than tens, or does he have a pair larger than tens or ace-king, and how do I feel about that situation? And that's something based on the read at the time. But I like being able to take the pot down right there. That's the way I look at it.
But Noah did choose to make that call, and as did the big blind, and then the flop came out. What would you have done on the flop? I know Noah made a basically pot-sized bet, about 3/4 of the pot.
Right. He bet, and this is we differ again a little bit. In this situation, I look at that as a vulnerable flop because there is a two-card straight out there, and then there's the 4 to a flush out there. And although
but he flops the set.
Right. You got to figure he has the best hand at that moment, but there's a lot of draws out there, and it's very possible that his opponent could be on one of those draws. And these days, if given a chance, someone is happy to bet the draw strong, hoping they may take the pot down there, or at least quiet you and get a free card on the turn with that. Kind of a blocker bet in some ways. So I really felt like he should have made a larger bet there to try to take the pot down right there. And I think my style of play, late stages of tournaments, which I kind of wish I did today, but I didn't, just got knocked out, is to win small pots to medium pots and not have to put all my chips at risk. So when I can make a raise, take a pot down, or then when they move in on me, I get away from the hand. I like that better than committing all my chips.
So you'd be happy taking that pot down on the flop
right there. I don't need any more chips in the pot.
Check, bet, take it.
Right.
And what about you, Michael? What do you think of that bet?
I agree with the original bet of about 3/4 of pot. To me, when I flop a set in that situation, and it is a draw heavy board, there's a lot of things.
Absolutely. Dangerous looking.
It is dangerous looking, but I'm willing to take the risk there to try to get paid off. Because if you come in with like an overbet of the pot, I think you're going to scare away people who even have like top pair. Let's say somebody, I think it was a Jack 10 7 board. Somebody had an Ace Jack or a King Jack or something like that.
You're going to get them off their hands.
Yeah, you're going to move them off their hand. You want to, especially since you're last to act, there's check to you and you're stabbing out at the pot. You want to put an element of doubt in your opponent's mind that perhaps you're just...
You also missed it.
Yeah, you missed the flop and you're just trying to take it down. Whereas like a big overbet of the pot, or even a pot-sized bet, most players are not going to think that that's a bluff. They're going to think, wow, he's got a strong hand and he's committing himself to the hand, so I better be willing to have a hand I'm committed to. So it's true that if you bet 3/4 of the pot and somebody with a flush draw thinks you might be full of it and they move in on you, then you have to survive. But you're still a 3-1 favorite against flush draw when you have a set, so you got to be willing to take that risk, I guess, to double up. And in the situation at hand, he ended up just barely pricing it. Well, he did not price in the small blind to call. But
so he should have driven a flush draw out at that point?
Yes, and that's what I showed it in my part in the article, is that that bet was large enough to price out anybody from drawing, but it was small enough to make a not so skilled player think that they were priced in.
Yeah, I know, and see, that kills me, how these people, he should have, it was you or me, and we were sitting there, especially with a 4, 5, 6 high flush draw, we're out of that hand so fast our head spins. But in that case, that guy calls, and the thing he doesn't know, even if he hits his flush draw, he still may not be good. If someone's there with someone flops a pair and a better flush draw.
Yeah, definitely.
All of a sudden, you're putting your eggs in one basket that may be empty. You may be drawing completely dead. And I don't understand how someone can call that big a raise and stay in a hand like that. And, it's funny. I've had it happen to me, as I'm sure you have, in the late stages of a tournament, where someone makes a crazy call where they're not priced in to do it, and for a low flush draw or the worst end of a straight, and they always seem to get there, though, don't they?
Makes you wonder.
Yeah, it's because you only notice when they get there, because when they don't get there, they just muck the hand. You never knew what they had. There's a selection.
That makes sense. But he did get there. The diamond came on the turn, the big blind bet out, and then Noah pushed all in. What do you think about that?
I hate that play, because then you're having to put all your money in with one card to come, hoping for the board to pair, and that's the only thing that saves you. I think Noah could have called that bet right there, and he still has a lot of chips left, and if the board doesn't pair on the river, he can get away from it. And, I think that would have been the smart move in my play.
What do you think about the turn play?
I completely agree with what Roy said. I mean, basically, you have 3 options when he bets into you on the turn. You can fold, call, or raise all in. There's not really any other raise besides it all in there at that point. And folding is just not an option. You have a strong enough hand because he bet $80,000, 80,000 tournament chips into a pot, which was like 220,000 or so. So you're getting almost 4-to-1 direct odds from the pot, in addition to any implied odds you might win on the river if you do fill up.
So he's not going to get away from the hand there.
And if your opponent might have flopped a straight, maybe, and was slow playing, and then led the turn, might have made a flush, and there's two different flushes, of course, and to you now there's flushes that are bigger than 10 high and those that are less than 10 high, because if they're smaller than 10 high, you have a lot more outs. You have 17 outs to redraw on.
Right. But I don't know if I'm sitting there with the redraw to the 10 high flush, I'm still not thrilled when it hits. I don't know about you, but that's going to be a hard bet for me to call if he moves all in on the river and I even hit the 10 high flush. I'm not loving it.
Right, but you're likely not going to have an opponent ship it all in on you. If they turned a small flush and then the river was a fourth diamond, most opponents will check it down and hope you don't have the diamond and not try to turn their hand into a bluff. So you might get a free showdown there. But yeah, I definitely agree that basically calling is really your only option. You're priced in to call. If you are behind, you're priced in to call to try to suck out either pair the board or catch another diamond. And if you're ahead, you don't accomplish much by raising because you're going to get your opponent to fold pretty much every hand that you have beat. And let's say they're semi-bluffing. The only thing you really do accomplish is protecting your hand in case they're semi-bluffing with a hand like King-Queen with the King of Diamonds.
Yeah,
let's say they had an open and a straight draw and a flop, and then now they turn a flush draw.
Right.
And you do give them a free look. But I think that's maybe worth the risk of not putting all your chips in when you're behind, and because putting your tournament life at risk is...
Right. And I think, and I say this all the time, and I think some people poo-poo this, the feeling among some tournament players are you have to get as many chips as quickly as possible in a massive, huge chip stack so you can win a tournament. But I think if you really look at the people in the early stages of tournaments with huge chip stacks, where are they at the end of the tournament? They're usually not the one winning it. And
That's
I think
very true.
Tournaments are about survival, and they're about accumulating chips when you can, avoiding the bad situations, because if you can't survive, you can't win the tournament. I mean, for me, I kid around and say, I just want to survive till I'm heads up. Then I'll play a little bit aggressive. But I think they really are about survival, and I think people miss that.
Yeah, that's my strategy. I mean, I play fairly tight, and I'm happy to squeeze along and
build
beat
it up
the first
a little
half
bit
of the
every
field,
level.
and then the next 2/3 of the field, and all of a sudden, wow, you beat 80% of the field, and you haven't really caught too many hands, and maybe you're just floating along average or a little below average, and you're close to the money, and all of a sudden you catch a few hands, and you double up, and you get a big stack, and you're there. I think
That's how you win tournaments?
Yeah,
it is. I really agree. And it's funny. I always wanted to look at where the final six in let's say in a WPT event, the TV table, where they were on days 1, 2, and 3, and where the chip leaders on days 1, 2, and 3 are. That might be something.
That'd be an interesting analysis.
Yeah,
we could probably figure it out.
Yeah, because I think the aggressive style early in a tournament that gets you those chips is the same aggressive style that I think may hurt you at times.
Correct. Yeah.
Well, thank you very much both for being here today. I'm looking forward to reading more of your columns.
Our pleasure.
Well, thanks a lot. We really enjoyed it.
Lizzie Harrison with Mike Binger and Roy Winston for Card Player TV.